So today I want to talk to you a little bit about a chicken breed I've mentioned before, but one that you may not really be familiar with. I've actually had a few people call me about this. I had forgotten a while back that I had put my cell phone number on our website, and this was when we were really more into selling eggs, hatching eggs, chicks, meat, all kinds of different things that we were into a year or so ago. And so I had forgotten that that was still on there since we aren't doing that this year. You've heard me mention that this year's kind of been our year of simplicity. We're not really doing a lot this year except just stuff for ourselves. So I had forgotten that I had left my phone number on my website. And so I've had a few people call me about this, and I welcome it. I'm not uptight and snooty. I'm going to answer your questions if you have questions. I'm not just going to blow you off. But anyhow, the most common question I've gotten when it comes to chickens is, what is your most favorite self-sufficient breed? But people don't actually ask me that question. They asked that question second to tell me more about Icelandic chickens. You're smart people. So today I'm going to talk to you about Icelandic chickens. Now, I had a sweet older lady. She was much older. She's probably in her 60s. That's not old, I know. I'm just saying. She's much older than I am. And she had actually called a couple months ago, I guess now, and asked me about Icelandic chickens. She said, listen, she's like, I've read the blogs, I've watched, a few videos, and I've been part of the Icelandic chicken group on Facebook, but I want to know from somebody who is really just starting out with them and has really tried them, what do you think about them? Now, I did start a blog post on this, or I did post one. We no longer have Icelandic chickens. That's not to say we won't have them again one day. The only reason we don't have them now is because they're such a unique breed, and they're not even a breed, they're a landrace, but we'll get to that in a second. Because they're so unique, we just don't have a large enough property for them. Not the way that I would want to raise them. Now, I certainly know that there are people out there who are raising them in a confined situation, and that's awesome. They do well in confinement as well. But the way I want to use them, which is to be self-sufficient, I can't raise them that way here because we're only on a ½ acre, and I would probably get them confiscated if I let them roam around because they don't stay in one place very long. So let's start and go over what Icelandic chickens are, and then we'll go into the pros and cons of them. Okay, so first of all, Icelandic chickens are probably not a breed that your grandma knew about. Because of my generation and the knowledge that we have at the tip of our fingertips, this Icelandic chickens are really something kind of new to the United States. We didn't have Icelandic chickens in the United States back in the 50s and 60s. We didn't. They are new, fairly new in the past 10 years or so. But they are not a new breed. In fact, they are probably, thinking back to dates, I think they are the most ancient chicken breed. And here's why. Icelandic chickens, you can hear my child in the background, I'm sorry. Icelandic chickens, they are called Icelandic hen of the settler. And that is because Vikings actually brought Icelandic chickens to Iceland. Of course, they weren't named Icelandic chickens then. In 9th century AD. These chickens were on boats with them, and they had them because they were self-sufficient. But that was normal back then. I mean, I think most chickens were self-sufficient back then. And what happened was, when the Vikings brought all of these chickens over in Iceland, because Iceland is so secluded over the past few centuries, they maintained their landrace status. Well, what is a landrace? A landrace is an animal or a plant that's been locally adapted to that area. It's developed over time. It has become adapted to what it needs to know. So it needs to know how to live, and it needs to know survival of the fittest. and that's a landrace. They are not considered breeds. In fact, there are some snooty people out there, and I am friends with them, who will say, do not call my Icelandic chickens a breed, because they're not a breed. They are a landrace. Icelandic chickens are the closest thing, the closest chicken you can get to a wild bird, okay? If you're looking for a self-sufficient chicken, that is what you want. You're not wanting something that can just sit on eggs. That's not really necessarily self-sufficient. You want a breed that is completely and totally self-sufficient. They don't need to be fed. As long as you have pasture, they do not need to be fed. Now, they should be fed either way. Wintertime is rough. If you're in the wintertime, obviously they're not going to forage for their food in the wintertime. However, when we had Icelandic chickens, I did not feed them more than a handful of times in the summertime. They wouldn't eat my feed. They would much prefer foraging, because that's what I allowed them to do first. And then I would feed them in the evenings, and they wouldn't eat because they were filled up from foraging during the day. So, Vikings, Icelandic chickens, landrace. Now, by the 1950s, unfortunately, Icelandic chickens were almost extinct in Iceland. This is due to, in fact, I can't remember the exact date, but I know that the United States was importing and exporting with Iceland. And what happened was, some of the imports came over, they were like white rocks and barred rocks. I know there were some Rhode Island Reds mixed in there too. And what happened was, some of the people in Iceland were actually, they were keeping multiple flocks, okay? What would happen is the United States commercialized chickens. You know me, I'm always looking for bears back there, because this is where they always come over. Sorry, anyhow. So some of the breeds were intermingling with the Icelandic breeds. What was happening is, when you do that, because chickens have specific temperaments to different breeds, and you know the United States, we love to mess with science and play God. So what was happening is, the Icelandic chicken landrace was becoming tainted. And so by the 1950s, because of everybody's kind of new interest in that, they were almost extinct. Now, believe it or not, there are actually Icelandic chickens in Iceland that are wild. They've either gotten out of their pens, off of their farms. They are thriving incredibly well. So what happened, they were able to get these in the farms that had preserved the Icelandic landrace. They had not brought over any of the new breeds from the importing and exporting. They kept their breeds true to what they were. So this basically conservation process went into place. Neighbors beeping at me. And now today, in 2016, we now have Icelandic chickens in the United States. Now, obviously, there's a big gap here, so let me tell you what happened in that gap. The conservation process started back in the 50s and 60s. We were not allowed to import and export with Iceland for a certain amount of time, because with animals like that, because they wanted to conserve that breed, that landrace. There were 5 different imports that happened of Icelandic chickens. The ban was lifted off of us importing Icelandic chickens to the United States, and so we had 5 different imports of Icelandic chickens. Those 5 original imports, now these are the 5 original imports that I'm talking about. I believe there have been just a couple of more since then, and they've been recent because of people wanting to be more involved in Icelandic chickens. The 5 imports were through bloodlines, Sigrid lines, and Vala lines. These lines are completely pure. They came from the farms, the original farms that kept them for centuries. And so they are the ancient breed. So from these lines, these are the lines that you want to get when you find a breeder of the Icelandic landrace. You want to make sure that they derive from these lines. Now, the reason for this is because we don't want contamination of the Icelandic landrace. We don't want that because then they're not pure. And people can get away with selling Icelandic chickens for a lot of money. And if they're not pure, then what's the point in having them? And it truly does make a difference. And here's why. In 2004, a study was done in Britain with blood samples from the Icelandic chicken. And it showed that 78% of the Icelandic chicken DNA is unmatchable to any other chicken breed. They are different, guys. They're very different. They are not like a normal chicken, and the blood test showed that. They could not match their DNA with another chicken's DNA. It just wasn't possible. Most Americanized breeds, modernized breeds, have similar DNA. Icelandic chickens do not, okay? So, it's very important not to breed them with modern breeds because it disrupts the DNA and it causes them to not be as self-sufficient as they could be. Okay, so we do not encourage you to breed them with other Americanized breeds or even international breeds. Just don't do it. Just don't ruin a good thing. Okay, so where do you get Icelandic chickens? How do you raise them? Harvey Ussery did a article in Mother Earth News, which is actually how I originally heard of Icelandic chickens. And he, surprisingly enough, lives maybe 20 miles up the road from me, if that. I was actually able to get multiple hatching eggs from Harvey. He was very kind, very full of knowledge. I mean, this man knows his stuff. Very knowledgeable and self-sufficient living. I mean, I've never met anyone as knowledgeable as him, and this is why he writes for Mother Earth News in print, not just blogging, and has written a book, and he's just a great person to be around to gain that knowledge. So I was able to get some hatching eggs from him. We hatched about 24 chicks. Multiple were roosters. Now the way we have set up here, we do not have electric netting. Now I do have a friend who has electric netting, and her Icelandic chickens are working out great with the electric netting. She moves the electric netting every few days, and so they're able to forage like they should. Because of my land layout, because I'm such a steep hill, number one, when a big rain comes and I have water running down my hill, I don't want to put my chickens in danger. My other thing was I was able to keep them separated from my modern chickens so that we could do breeding pens. However, it's still, my current setup did not allow for me to do it the way I wanted to do it. Okay, so I didn't want to put in $1,000 to set this up when this might not even be our property that we're on for the rest of our lives. In fact, I know it won't be. So our Icelandic chickens went to another home. Actually went to a bed and breakfast up the road from us who wanted self-sufficient chickens, and they're now taken care of and doing very well. That's the only reason we got rid of them. The pros and cons, there are lots of pros to Icelandic chickens. Not only are they are naturally broody. Every single one of them is naturally broody. So they have that part of self-sufficiency. They are not necessarily a broody hen who needs human intervention. You know, with our broody hens, we move them and, you know, put them in a different area. And yes, that I highly suggest that. But should a crap hit the fan instance come and you don't have that ability or that want and need, Icelandic chickens are going to do it themselves. That they are that self-sufficient. They don't need to be separated. So the other part of that, not only are they sufficient mothers and broody hens, they will take care of their young on their own without intervention. They are also incredible foragers when you allow them to be the way that they were meant to be. Incredible foragers. Now I will tell you, the cons are that they are wild. The more you allow them out in the open to forage, the more likely you're going to have hens disappear for 30 days and hatch eggs, and then one day they'll bring them back. You know, so you've got that con. Now, as I said, you can confine them. You can do kind of like a setup that we wanted to have. You can confine them at night and let them out during, you know, the first half of the day or the second half of the day, depending on when you're home or if you're not home all the time. You can also have electric netting. That seems to be the best way to do it if you're trying to confine them. I have a friend over at Sky Paint Nigerian Farm, and she raises Icelandic chickens very efficiently with electric netting, and that's actually how Harvey does it as well. He's able to separate all 3 of his lines out with electric netting and a 3-part coop that's separated in 3 different parts. So electric netting seems to be the best way, but you have to have a property large enough to do it. And for us, that was the issue. We did not have a property large enough to keep them the way I wanted to keep them. So I will touch on the meat part. Yes, they are self-sufficient in meat as well. They are not huge, but they actually taste really, really good. Harvey was telling me that they're smaller than a regular chicken. They're not necessarily like a meat breed, like a rock or like a what did we do? Oh, like the Franken chicken or the Red Rangers or something like that. They're not meat breeds, but they are really good. They're smaller, but they're not too small. I mean, you could feed off of a chicken, an Icelandic chicken, but they're kind of sweet. They're really good. They're really tasty, and so they're great for meat as well. So the pros are Icelandic chickens are not just a modern breed from the 60s or a modern breed from today that are self-sufficient. You have to really look at self-sufficiency from every single angle. Would they survive if you had something happen? Something happened and you either had to not have feed for a while or what? Would they be able to survive? Yes, Icelandic chickens would be able to. Are they self-sufficient in broodiness without having to be separated? Yes, they are. Will the flock integrate well with them? Yes, they will. The other point of that is, though, please keep in mind that if you're going to have Icelandic chickens and you want to conserve the breed, you either need to consider getting rid of your modern chickens, like these guys back here. They're heritage breeds, but they're still a modern breed. You're either going to have to get rid of them or make sure they are completely separate from your Icelandic chickens, because when they start mating together and you start intermingling those lines, I think you're going to find that you have more issues than you realize. So, I think I've covered enough. I've given you enough information without hopefully overloading you. I really encourage you to look at this breed if you're looking for a true self-sufficient chicken. I enjoyed them. They were a little flighty, probably due to the fact that I didn't spend enough time with them when they were chicks because of this just being so busy at that time. And also it was winter time when I hatched them, so I wasn't out in the cold all the time, all day long. But the other part is that because they are wild, they are a little bit wild. You know, they're very independent and they don't really need you. They just don't. So if you're looking for, a pet breed that you're going to be able to pick up and cuddle, probably not. Probably not. If you're looking for a breed that's going to sustain you, great. That's it from me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I know a lot of you are going to have some questions about this, so please ask them. It's hard to fit everything into a video when I know we all have short attention spans, myself included. In fact, in the middle of this video, I had a neighbor stop by, and I had to go take care of that, which is fine. I love our neighborhood. It's so nice. So if you have questions, ask them. Otherwise, I encourage you to do your own research. There is an Icelandic Chickens group on Facebook, so I also encourage you to go there. I will link it below. And everybody have a great week and happy homesteading.